everyone, my name is Mary Hayden. The study I've proposed this semester is on the perception of eyewitnesses by a jury, specifically when it comes to their gender. For my presentation today, I'm going to start off with background information on gender and eyewitnesses, touch base on the scope of my problem, share my research question and my hypothesis, go through my research design and the method I've selected, and share any strengths, limitations, and implications that can come from my study. At the end, I'm going to have a conclusion. Not a whole lot of studies have been done on the credibility and believability of an eyewitness due to their gender. A lot of studies have been done in general on gender and credibility, but those tend to focus on the defendant and the victim and their gender, not much on the eyewitness. Because there's a lack of research on eyewitnesses and gender, 3 researchers, Robinson, Olver, and Boone, decided to do their own research on this topic. Together, they decided to use voice recordings of eyewitnesses instead of their faces and have listeners judge based on what they heard. These 3 found that when individuals listened to the recordings, both female and male listeners judged the female to be more credible on the grounds of asserting her innocence. So this means that without even seeing her face, both females and males tended to believe the female when she said that she was innocent. With there not being a whole lot of research on gender of eyewitnesses and believability, I feel that there's a huge lack of potential data that could be used in the courtroom. In real life, we see females get treated differently every single day, but could this also be assumed in court? Females are thought to be more emotional, and males tend to have more credibility to individuals on a street level, but there's nothing that shows that this also holds up in court when dealing with an emotional case. If females are thought to be more emotional, could it be true that they would be believed more in an emotional case? Or would a male be believed more because he has more credibility? I feel like without knowing this, it can be a little bit more difficult to select your jury members if you're dealing with a case such as a sexual assault. So data like this needs to be collected to help attorneys who are selecting these juries pick the very best people to make sure that justice is served. My research question is, does the perceived gender of an eyewitness unconsciously persuade a jury more in a sexual assault case to believe the victim? I believe that it does. I feel like a female eyewitness would be believed more than a male eyewitness in this kind of case, simply because a female eyewitness could be viewed more like the victim, whereas a male eyewitness might be viewed more as the defendant. And because of that, the male might be viewed more negatively by the jury. I think a female, even with being emotional, would have a better chance of the jury believing her and the victim being believed in general. The population I'm going to focus on for my study is here in my hometown of Rochester, New York. I'm going to be using individuals living in Monroe County over the age of 18 who are legally able to sit on a jury during trial. I'm going to use simple random sampling as well. I'm looking for around 200 participants that will be selected at random from the list of those who qualify for jury duty. This means they need to either be a registered voter or have a driver's license. That way they're on record with the state from when they poll for their jury selections. These individuals will be brought in for voir dire, and from there a smaller amount will be selected for each jury. Juries will have about 14 participants in total, 12 sitting on the bench, 2 as alternatives. And because of these small juries, I'm going to need to do about 17 trials to reach my target goal of 200. If everyone sits on for the entire trial, 17 trials will give me 204 individuals for participation. Also in my trial, I have 2 variables for measurement: perceived gender of the eyewitness and the unconscious bias of a jury. The perceived gender of the eyewitness is my independent variable. This is conceptualized as the biological classification of male or female assigned to the eyewitness at birth. So if you were born a female, we're going to assume that you're a female, and if you were born a male, we're going to assume that you're a male. For measuring this, it's going to be based solely on looks. If a juror looks at you and you look female, you're going to be presumed to be a female. And if they look at you and you look male, it's going to be presumed that you are a male. So my measurement for this variable is 100% based on the look of the eyewitness. My dependent variable is the unconscious bias of the jury. This is conceptualized as decisions made by jury members without knowing what caused them. They're quick thoughts made right away, outside of awareness, and they don't result in longer moments to think. This is going to be measured in a survey that will take place at the end of the trial, and it's going to ask the simple question, did the gender of the eyewitness affect what you heard them say and play a role in the verdict you decided? The entire time of the trial, these jury members will not know what specifically is being measured in this study. They'll know a study is being placed, but we don't want to tell them that it's on gender because I worry that this may affect their quick thoughts, and it may change if they believe the eyewitness more, knowing that we're trying to study male versus female. My study would also be cross-sectional. All my data is going to be gathered at the time of the trial, and I'm not going to need to revisit my jurors once they walk out of that courtroom and the survey is complete. Cross-sectional studies also tend to happen pretty quickly, and my trial is going to take place in about 2 days. The only aspect of my trial that could take long is deliberation by the jury, which I'm not anticipating to take longer than a day at most. Because of my quick turnaround, the cross-sectional part of my study made the most sense for me, with everything being such a fast pace and only one-time data collection. The method I'm going to be using for my study is a mock trial. Every single role is going to be cast for those in the courtroom, so the judge, the attorneys, the victim defendant, as well as my eyewitness. Both the female and male eyewitness will be cast, and they're going to be given the same script, except some trials are going to get the male eyewitness, and some trials will get the female. They'll never be sitting in the same trial, just so we can judge, based on gender, what some jurors think. The defendant's going to be a male, and it's going to be a sexual assault case involving a female victim. Jury members will be told at the time of voir dire that this is a study and not a real trial, as well as what the trial is on. The questioning for voir dire is going to take place at the time any other would in a typical trial, and it's going to weed out anyone that's not right for this case. So at that time, if a juror member has a past with a sexual assault, or they feel it could be traumatic and not cause them to be neutral, they will be dismissed. This is how it happens in a regular court, and I'm trying to keep everything as general and typical as possible for a court. That way it doesn't feel like they're in a study, and it feels like they're doing their civic duty of a jury selection. Once the trial starts, we're going to have the eyewitness speak, the victim and the defendant may speak as well. I have not quite thought that one out yet, but I do know I'm going to have my eyewitness speak just so we can solely judge what the jury thinks based on them. Because of that, I might not have my victim speak. It might just be a victim impact statement read by someone general in court. And my defendant might just plead the fifth. That way then we can focus solely on the eyewitness and their gender. Once the trial is complete, jurors will go in for deliberation. Again, I'm not anticipating this part to take more than a day, but it's totally up to the jurors. So it could take an hour, it could take 12. It all depends on what they believe. Once a jury has come to the verdict will be read aloud. And again, they will be reminded that this is a study and not a real trial, so the defendant is not actually going to jail. Once this verdict is read, the jurors will be handed a survey asking that one simple question of if the gender of the eyewitness affected their verdict and what they believed. It will be at this time that the jurors will find out that gender is what we're studying with the whole trial. I don't want them finding out beforehand, so the survey is going to be the giveaway of what this trial is all about. The limitations of my study, I feel like there's quite a lot, but with this being a mock trial and it being based on sexual assault, I feel like a lot could be touched base on. The length of my trial is probably one of my biggest limitations because the voir dire process could take quite a bit, and it might take a very long time to select my jury. I need to select about 17 full juries for trials, which would be about 204 people in general, and we're processing from probably close to around 1,000 people coming in. So it will take days to get juries selected, but once I have one full jury selected, I don't need to wait. I can start one trial. Another limitation is that every trial needs to be completely identical. Those casted to play parts can't stray from their script in order to keep the study intact. If anything is different, it could be viewed as something that might change what a jury believes. Another limitation is that potential jurors might have a past with a similar case, and they feel that they can't sit on the trial. This is going to limit the number of individuals who would be likely to participate, especially with it being sexual assault. I feel like it's got such a negative rap that this might turn people away right at the beginning of voir dire questioning. Finally, a limitation is that jurors are going to be self-reporting on the survey, and they do have the ability to lie on if the gender of the eyewitness affected their verdict. We're trusting them to be honest and saying yes or no, but again, you never really know. They could say yes when actually didn't, or they could say no because they feel bad that they judged the male or female so harshly based on their gender without even knowing. I feel like using a mock trial is a really great strength for my study. It gives it a real world perspective, and it makes the jurors feel like they're actually listening in on a real case and having to decide the fate of an individual based on testimony and an eyewitness's view of what happened. These jurors are going to be feeling like they're doing their civic duty, and having it feel like a real world situation or actually happening in real life, I feel like is great for my data. I also feel like a strength would be that new data is going to be provided to courtrooms and anyone who plays a role within them. Very few cases on believability of an eyewitness due to gender have been done, and the study could increase the data on file, as well as potentially bring about more individuals who want to do research on this and further the data that those playing roles in the courtroom, such as the attorneys picking the juries, have. Implications of my study are that more research definitely needs to be done on the believability of an eyewitness based on their gender. We see it with defendants and we see it with victims, but eyewitnesses really aren't touched on, and I feel like that needs to change because eyewitness testimony can play such a large role. In some situations, not always in sexual assault, the eyewitness testimony is what gets someone locked up in prison. So we need to study more on their gender to see if that's going to play an effect. Also, I feel that this study could open the eyes to those that are able to sit on juries about the thoughts that they're making without even noticing them. This could help those who have a future being in the courtroom remember to think about everything that's being told to them before jumping and making a decision. This could also be true outside of the courtroom and showing individuals that they do need to slow down and think before they make a decision on a topic. Thank you so much for taking your time to listen to my presentation today on my potential study. I'm very excited to do research on it and learn more about eyewitnesses and if their gender does play a role in the courtroom. With my future being in the courtroom, I feel very passionate on this topic, and not having a whole lot of research does upset me. So I want to be able to change that and make people want to do more research on gender and eyewitnesses and the courtroom in general. And this slide shows any and all information I used for sources, for images, as well as my case study. Thank you so much for listening.